Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I canceled my death for this, so it better be good. And I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
Hey, I'm Gooey Fame, and come to me if you want to die, I guess.
I slept in a bed for the first time.
It's pretty good deal.
Yeah, and we're back to explore the inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek. In this case, in this week's edition, are you ready to get political?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like any way that we can avoid it. But no. We'll talk about that when we dive into the misery later. But what's up with you right now?
No, I mean, everything's just kind of continuing in the same sort of way, you know? So, yeah. I don't know, nothing new. You know what, I did realize, and I want to get this in because I should have said it at the end of last week's episode, or last episode we did, where we were doing plugs, that I should have said that you were on Pro Wrestling Required Viewing. And, Yeah, I'm bad at plugging stuff, as you know.
Well, you do it right now.
Yeah, so just want to do a pre-show plug and say, you should come listen to us talk about Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling connection.
Yeah. Pro Wrestling Required Viewing, your podcast with you and Vic. Does Vic have a second name or a last name?
Vic's real name is Matt Vickers.
Oh, okay.
Goes by Vic. So
it's just the Vic. Okay.
Yeah, just the Vic.
Yeah, and we talked about rock and wrestling, which we weren't really in the midst of COVID stuff just then. But I wanted to pick something that was wrestling related, but had nothing to do with any wrestling controversy or Saudi Arabia or dead wrestlers or anything. Just something when I know that like the business of wrestling has always been a cutthroat business, but when it seemed to be at its most innocent, you could just get in a race, a drag race with Roddy Piper, and just have a good time.
Yeah, things are more fraught now than ever, it seems.
Do you think, I don't want to go too deep into the wrestling thing, but I do think you should listen to the show. It was a lot of fun to record. But do you think that like WWE just doesn't, they know kids are watching, but there's no real desire to attach the kid market anymore besides toys?
Yeah, because I think we talked about it in that episode, but I think now they're just trying to be all quadrants or whatever. We're We're for kids, we're for moms, we're for diehard wrestling fans too. We got it all.
Yeah, because you used to have Roddy Piper was definitely a fan favorite, but he's a loudmouth and he's a jackass. And then you've got, the guy he's a chef in his spare time, but he also wrestles or whatever the faces were. But now it's like everybody, like you got Roman Reigns, you got John Cena, who's kind of ridiculous, but everybody's a badass. There aren't any kid-friendly guys. I'm not saying there should be, but it just seems like they've said, post-Attitude Era, everybody's a badass.
It kind of sucks a little bit with the characters like that, because, there are some who I liked because they had that kid energy, and it's like,
sure.
Yeah, there should be stuff for kids in wrestling, obviously. But then there's always like a bunch of people who are like, oh, I don't like them, and then it's like, we got to make them like everyone's got to be Stone Cold Steve Austin now,
Right? Yeah, I think Mick Foley really embodied that in like all of his various personas because he was super friendly and he appreciated like the goofy side of everything, but he was also the guy who was like getting his skull split open and like falling 40 feet onto the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, and everyone's got to be dark and tortured. And
Right, yeah, but he was dark and tortured, but he got that it was overdone, and so did it for a while and then became like Dude Love,
Yeah, that's true.
Give him a little bit of all those quadrants, in one person. Well, yeah, absolutely go check that out and some other shows, and it's a great podcast. I was thinking about this whole situation. Of course, again, we're talking about disease-related stuff this week, and we won't be on our next show. But since we're doing it now, I guess we could talk a little bit about what's going on in Corona world. And we're at a point where it's like we planted a flag. May or mid-May is when everybody is expected to reopen and stuff like that. But the projections keep coming in that it's not, it's not over, or at least it's not resolved. And the response from Washington seems to be, great job, Brownie. We did it. Let's shut it down, shut it all down. We're all fine now.
It's
and
very
I think it's
mission
clear that
accomplished on the aircraft carrier vibe.
Yeah. The one good thing came out of that. I think there will never be a mission accomplished banner. We'll never have that moment ever again.
No.
But now the moment just seems to be, let's sneak out the back while they're not looking.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, there's been like announcements now. I kind of think that a lot of this is orchestrated because there's announcements that there's going to be a meat shortage, and that makes everybody run out and buy meat. And it's like, I guess if you wanted a bunch of people to buy all the meat you had, you could just tell them there'd be a shortage, right? Like I went to the store today to buy meat, and I was kind of looking over the meat aisle to see about this shortage, and there's a lot of meat. In fact, a lot of it was on sale. In fact, I saw in the freezer's case, or in like the cooler case, they had these huge packs of bacon that had like maybe 200 slices of bacon in them, and they're going for $45-50. And my girlfriend was like, you know what that is? That's like catering packs of bacon. Like restaurants are closed, and Cargill or whatever company it is has all this bacon that they got to get rid of. So now they're just going to turn it into a consumer product and just go out and buy that. So I don't see where this shortage is just yet. Although, to be fair, I did buy more meat than I probably would have.
Well, because that's also anticipating other people are going to do that too, I assume.
Yeah,
right?
But as soon as they announce that, it becomes there will be a shortage because everybody's going to run out and freeze a bunch of meat.
Yeah, that happened with toilet paper and all that stuff. Yeah. Just like now there's plenty of toilet paper still.
Yeah, I did get my hands on some paper towels, and I didn't have to fight anybody. So I think the paper towel crisis is lessening. But anyway, it makes me think about the economic factors and the intentions of people in times of crisis. And again, it's all just what we're talking about later. So let's swerve away from that again real fast. And I want to talk about something that I saw on YouTube that I wanted to share with you and with the audience if they haven't seen it yet. There's a guy with a YouTube channel called Ryan's Edits who's doing these videos, and he calls them Star Trek intakes.
Okay.
And it's sort of a play on outtakes. And what it is, if you get like TNG on like Blu-ray or DVD, they often put bloopers and outtakes and stuff in there. And what he's done is that he's taken the scenes in the episodes that these outtakes are from, and he's reinserted the outtakes into those scenes, like used those outtakes. But he's also very like skilled comedically as an editor, so he also like sort of subtly massages the scene to enhance the humor of whatever's happening. So like the example is there's the episode I think from first or second season where Picard he's like talking about making model ships as a boy, and he's like, I used to make ships in bottles. It was great. Did anybody make ships in bottles? Anybody? And Michael Dorn, his Worf, is like, I never played with boys. and then they sort of cut, a couple, deadpan takes of silence from everybody. And then O'Brien's like, I did, sir. He's like, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. So it's just like stuff like that. He's doing like one a week, and they are very, very pleasant and entertaining.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Speaking of being pleasant and entertaining, Jonathan Frakes, who is the, of course, former star of TNG, did a show called Beyond Belief, which many people know as being. Did you ever watch Beyond Belief?
I haven't. No, I remember shows like it, but I don't think that was what I watched. I do remember some of those like, ooh, isn't this freaky show? So
yeah. You're not missing all that much, but he's famous now for the compilation videos on YouTube of him, affirming things or denying things or asking questions. Well, apparently he did like a parody video for the people that make PUBG. But Battle Player Underground Field. I don't know. What's it called? Player Unknown Battlegrounds?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Whew. And he did it's like a video that kind of, it's going into like the lore of some element of the game. I haven't played the game, and he's doing it in the style of is this fact or fiction?
Oh yeah, I saw. No, this is something else I had saw a while ago where he did that for some like movie or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, so he's just going back to the well on this.
I think this is like a year ago because I found it through looking up clips with my old podcast host Mary, who did watch that show. And yeah, there's some like Netflix movie or something where there's like he's doing almost like it's like pretty much the same. It's like a modern take on it, but it's like almost Black Mirror like, and he's talking about like phones or something, and it's very, it's like kind of an elevated parody of it, but he's, leaning into it. So that's just what he's doing now.
Well, that and directing and stuff like that. But
and
starring on Star Trek Picard. But yeah,
no, he's killing it.
I've never played PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds or Fortnite or any of those. I guess they call them Battle Royale games, right?
Yeah. Me either, really. I have a friend who's really into them.
I guess I could see the appeal, but it's just like any, multiplayer game where you're going up against much younger players who have much more time to play it than you do. And the whole point is to survive to the end. I ain't surviving to the end.
No. Have you ever played Tetris 99?
Yeah, in 1999. I don't remember playing it.
They got a Tetris Battle Royale now, so
I'll give that a shot, I guess. I'm a little more confident on my Tetris skills than my shooting skills. But I guess the company that made it's sort of like, I think they're a South Korean company, and it sort of developed out of them like screwing around and like creating, I don't know, just like mods or just kind of playing with stuff. And the reason it's called like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is because PlayerUnknown was like the developer / player who that was his handle or something like that.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, like as a company, this is what interests me about it. As a company, they just sort of had to kind of accrete together as this thing became super popular. It was like, oh crap, we have to be like game producers and like executives now in order to like get the money out of this. Sort of like how Minecraft became super popular, and the guy that made it was like, well, I don't know what to do with this, and then he just sold it to Microsoft for like billions of dollars.
Right.
And like one of the things, and then their main competitor, some would say like the competitor that sort of left them behind, Fortnite, they were always like a company that knew what they were getting into, basically stole the idea of Battlegrounds, survived the court case saying that, and then went on to just market the living fuck out of their property, which is smart. But this just having this commercial, having him in a commercial, they've done a couple other goofy commercials, is like the sign that like they're starting to understand more that no, we're actually going to have commercials for this if we want to like compete with Marshmello doing concerts in Fortnite or whatever it is.
Yeah. Especially, I think the only other times I've seen a commercial for it, it felt like I knew what it was, but the commercial felt like, is this a like random mobile game? Like this looks awful, like their advertising was not good.
Yeah. Is there any flossing in this? Come on, I need to know.
Yeah, their popularity exploded like way quicker than they could get a handle on it. So
yeah. I find that part of it fascinating. Not enough to play the game though.
Yeah, right.
So we could talk about anything on this show. It doesn't have to be just Star Trek. But I think we probably should get into our featured subject for today's show. Oh, the one other thing I want to talk about is nobody seems to know how old Kurt Loder is. My girlfriend was startled to discover that he is 75, and I'm like, yeah, he was born in like 1945 or something like he was drafted into Vietnam, so like he's not young.
Yeah, that was the thing that didn't shock me. I guess I was just like, oh, I never thought about how old he is.
Yeah, right.
He was an adult when I was a child, so okay.
Yeah. And he was right. That's like how he got to start. He was writing it, Rolling Stone in the sort of Almost Famous era, if that places it for people. And then just got hooked up with this, crazy fledgling thing called MTV. So yeah, grandfathered in, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt.
Didn't have to be a young, cool VJ, but yeah, he will die soon. Let's get to our featured subject for today's show. It's about the Great Depression. The Great Depression was, as its name might suggest, it was not such a fun time. The world economy was in shambles, Millions of people were out of work, many of them homeless. Hooverville sprang up across the country, and millions more were displaced by economic hardships. And they were looking for work or support in places far from their homes. And just like the value of stocks in a crashing market, human lives and human dignity became a cheap commodity at the time, and countless people sacrificed their bodies and their dignity in the name of survival. And one particularly sadistic manifestation of the desperation of the time could be found in dance marathons, or walkathons, as they were called then, competitions which would require couples to dance nearly nonstop, sometimes for days, multiple weeks, while spectators cheered or jeered them on. And dance marathons were vaudevillian spectacles with crooked promoters exploiting the pain and exhaustion of desperate competitors for ticket sales. A cash prize was usually the motivation for the ultimate winner, much like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds Chicken Dinner. But many signed up to be dancers simply because the contestants were well fed. They got to eat, and it was the only way that many of them could eat. Naturally, injury, mental illness, and sometimes death were the result of such competitions, and all those outcomes and the motivations of the people on the dance floor and the ones holding the cash boxes are explored in the 1969 film They Shoot Horses, Don't They?
Easy come.
People are the ultimate spectacle.
And now you're going to see it, Yowza, the Derby! One couple, and only one, will waltz out of here over broken bodies and broken dreams, carrying the grand prize of $1,500 silver dollars. And believe me, these wonderful kids deserve your cheers, because each one of them is fighting down pain, exhaustion, weariness, struggling to keep going, battling to win. And isn't that the American way? You bet it is.
What I mean is, if you think about it, cattle ain't got it much worse than us.
If she ain't pregnant, I'm Nelsonetti.
So what's healthier than having a kid?
Number 78 is in trouble. We're going to poor judge over there.
What are you gonna do? Put us in cages and let them throw peanuts at us?
The boy from 67 is down. He is definitely down.
Look at us. We're all like this now. Dirty, swollen feet, no sleep. What do you want?
6, 7.
Shut up, Doc! Damn it! Hang up! Oh. Hang on to me!
Jesus!
They ain't quitting.
Get him off me! Get him off!
Help me.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, this is my first time even knowing about this whole thing, this whole dance marathon thing. I was completely surprised, I guess. Not surprised, but just like, oh, okay.
This is my first time knowing how to properly say the title of the film with the correct emphasis.
Oh, because the titular
Is it like
line.
they shoot horses or they shoot horses? No, it's they shoot horses, don't they? Yeah.
Or it's more like they shoot horses, don't they?
Or yeah, sorry, a little more emphasis.
Like, what did I do?
Yeah, right. It's the first time that this movie was the linchpin that put it all together for me, because I knew about the film. This is the first time I'd seen the film. I knew, I guess, vaguely that it was about a dance contest, but I didn't understand that it was about the Depression. And I knew the title. I think that's probably how everybody has interfaced with this property, if they have at all, in the intervening years. Like a lot of works of agitprop or like political commentary, often it's the just interesting aspects to it, or the marketable aspects of it that get remembered. So that Simpsons can do, an episode called They Shoot Moe's, Don't They? Or something like that. And that's the only time that you'll ever really get an allusion to something like this. It reminds me of like a Che Guevara t-shirt. That's what he would have wanted, right? That's definitely what he would have wanted.
That's the takeaway, yeah.
Yeah, but this is the first time that saw the movie, understand it's about a dance competition, but it's really about exploitation of the underclass And okay, now it all clicks together, makes sense. Made in '69, a real heyday for films of political commentary.
Yeah, it's great. You watch the whole movie and you go, "Why is it called this?"
Yeah, but I will say when it opens, and it's like a montage between people showing up at the dance competition, and then it's like a kid. Oh, I love this horse. Oh, it's so beautiful. You're like, oh, that horse is gonna die.
Yeah, it's a little bit of spoiler there in the title for sure.
Title spoiler. The film's directed by Sidney Pollack, who is I've been watching a lot of films by Sidney recently. There's Sidney Pollack, Sidney Lumet, and Sidney Furie, who are all great directors from the 20th century. But this is Sidney Pollack. He directed a bunch of films, and a lot of them were very highly rated, or at least accepted. Out of Africa won him an Academy Award for Best Director. He was nominated for this, and he also directed Tootsie, which he was nominated for, and a couple other films. And he's also a sometime actor, and I think he's a pretty good actor, but in his later career, he just became guy that shows up to give a serious speech to the main character. So, like, if you've seen Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise, he's Tom Cruise's lawyer. So he's the guy who's throwing the party that they go to initially. Yeah. And then at the end of the film, when Tom Cruise is like, what's going on with this weird, like, mask cult? And he's like, listen, man, you don't want any part of this. You got to get out of this. This isn't for you. Or like in Michael Clayton, he's the guy that tells George Clooney, you don't know how high this goes. You got to get out of this. He's just always doing that speech to like everybody.
Serious man.
Yeah. Bring this guy in. He's a guy that seems nice, but he's definitely connected to the darker elements of what's going on. And the film's based on a 1935 book by a guy named Horace McCoy. And as far as I could tell, the book isn't really held up as any kind of statement or political piece. I mean, it was obviously written contemporaneously, with these like dance competitions, and it certainly doesn't paint them in a good light. But it was mainly thought of at the time as an absurdist existentialist piece, and it was popular with existentialist groups, really more abroad than in America. And the novel and the film are nearly identical in plot, except the novel ends, spoiler alert, with the contest being called off because of a totally unrelated murder, rather than Gloria and Robert just quitting because they discover the whole thing is a sham, basically.
Oh, yeah. So that it's in itself makes it a little bit more pointed at something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That was definitely intentional, I think. The movie did really gangbusters for a small film. It did fairly well on its small budget. It received 9 nominations at the Academy Awards that year for Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Adapted Screenplay, and it won for Best Supporting Actor for Gig Young, the guy that plays the MC. It holds the Academy record for the most nominations without getting a nomination for Best Picture.
Oh, interesting. That's strange. I wonder why it didn't get the nod. They just, had so many that they could give out, I guess.
Yeah, and plus we're going to talk about politics, but like I think the Academy Awards are very politicized, and so maybe I didn't look and see what else was up in '69. I think it'd be hard to throw a rock without hitting a politically charged film in '69. But there was also things like, I don't know, Camelot, or more feel-good picks, and so maybe the Best Picture noms went to that.
Sure.
But I think this is definitely, there's a lot of artistry on display, and even if you don't like some of the performances, you can tell like they were trying to tell you something when they made this movie, and I think a lot of Academy voters reacted to that. Yeah,
I can see that. If you told me though that there were like 8 better movies that year, I'd probably believe it.
I think this was, I'm trying to remember the stats that I read, but I think that this was one of the highest rated movies of the year, but it was in like the mid-teens as far as people's like best of lists. Yeah. This movie was important for a lot of actors at the time. It was it's described as a turning point for Fonda, Jane Fonda, who was a movie star that people knew at that point, but she had not done anything really serious, and I don't feel like she had really been the star of anything, except perhaps the year before she starred in Barbarella, of course, directed by her husband Roger Vadim, which set her up as a sex symbol. But this is the movie that really convinced people she was a serious actress. It also stars Susanna York, who was a star of stage and screen, and this was an important turning point for her as well. And then, of course, I mentioned Gig Young before. Gig Young's real name is Byron Barr, and he was an actor who had done, I think, vaudeville himself and had a long, long career, and was in a movie where he played a character named Gig Young. And after that, like, his agent's like, you got to change your name to Gig Young. And he's like, all right, I guess
that's a very pro wrestling move right there.
Right, yeah. I guess I'm Gig Young now. And he had been nominated twice before for acting awards, but this was his first win for Best Supporting Actor. He based his catchphrase of "Yowza, yowza, yowza" on the catchphrase of a famous band leader and radio personality named Ben Burney from the time.
Okay, yeah, he had a very inspired performance. I think that was good stuff.
Yeah, apparently he was sort of forced on the producers, by the producers on the show. Sidney Pollack didn't really want him. We'll get into that in a little bit. The film also features Bruce Dern and Bonnie Bedelia in two of their earliest film roles. Yeah,
I had never seen them in like a movie this old, I guess. So it was interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of age, Bonnie Bedelia is somebody that you don't think of as being old, because she looks so young and good. But the wife from Die Hard was in this movie.
Yeah, for me, it was just interesting to even see Jane Fonda, because like my interaction with her has not been like, you know, her classic film roles. It's been like, you know, Book Club or something like that. You know, like
or
funny old
Grace
lady,
and Frankie, or
yeah.
And of course, the movie also stars comedian and actor Red Buttons as well, who is somebody else somebody that I don't think people even know who that is anymore. But
I don't. Yeah,
was also kind of forced on Sidney Pollack. In the early 50s, actor Norman Lloyd and Charlie Chaplin were looking for a film project, which they had planned for Lloyd to direct and Chaplin would produce. And they purchased the rights to the novel for $3,000, and they had planned to cast Chaplin's son, Sidney Chaplin, as the main character and Marilyn Monroe as Gloria. And a funny thing happened on the way to making that happen. Charlie Chaplin had left the country to go back to his native England, and because this is a crazy time in America, he was seen as a communist sympathizer, and J. Edgar Hoover had his return visa revoked, basically.
Oh, my God.
So he can't get back into the country, and movie dead, essentially.
Is that the, like, end of the line for him, or did he ever have a comeback?
No, I think that was it. I think that was pretty much it for him. He just had to hang out in Europe after that.
Sweet. Okay.
It's the Red Scare, man. Have we done the Red Scare yet? We've touched on it.
We should do it. Yeah, we should.
I'm trying to think of
we did the witch trials one was kind of that.
That's true. Oh no, we undercut ourselves.
No, we got to do it. There's still room for it.
But there was literal witches in that one though. Yeah, and
yeah, that's fair.
Lucian or whatever, the devil. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what Trek's, because it's like all of Trek is kind of McCarthyism a little bit, but like what's the most? That's I think that would be a good one.
All right, I like this. We're figuring out future episodes.
The screenwriter of the movie, James Poe, eventually sort of took over the project, and he had planned to direct. And he had worked on a bunch of films like Around the World in 80 Days, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which he won an Academy Award for, and Summer and Smoke. And again, they had problems with the production. They wanted Mia Farrow, but she was too expensive. Eventually, they found Jane Fonda and Michael Sarrazin. And at that point, a guy named Martin Baum took over as the head of the production company, or the distributor, ABC Pictures. And he fired Poe, so he's out. And then he hired Susanna York and Gig Young and Red Buttons. And
this is nuts to me. Like,
yeah,
a movie that, you know, is seen as, and it's definitely trying to be like this political commentary, has all this like
there's
this, like,
all
studio production nightmare.
Hollywood is vaudeville. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And it's funny because before he was fired, the original Poe wanted to cast his girlfriend as as Gloria. So it's all just corrupt and it's all just back scratching and that sort of thing. And just to put the final nail in that, they had looked at other directors for the movie, like William Friedkin and Jack Smite, who is a very good director that people don't really know these days, but he was popular then. And Sidney Pollack bid the lowest. He basically Smite wanted 25 or Smite wanted 250 grand, Friedkin wanted 200, and Pollack wanted 150. So they're like, "You got the job, buddy."
Wow, some of this makes sense now when thinking about the movie. Like I think some of this like bled into the movie itself. But
were you familiar with dance marathons or walkathons before watching this?
No, not at all. Like that's like this movie, and the movie doesn't really like try to describe it, which I don't. I'm not saying it needs to be like The Big Short to be like, hey, just so you know, like this was a thing that happened. But yeah, it was like
you want like Margot Robbie to come in and be like, all right, listen, these people dance, they got to eat.
Yeah. I actually had no problem with this, but it reminded me of like when people with like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where people like I didn't understand like who the Mansons are or whatever, like where it's like, well, you just have to like sometimes have an understanding of history, and that was on me this time, where I was like, stopped the movie like 5 minutes in and was like, is this a real thing? And looked it up and I'm like, okay, and then I was down for the ride. But it was interesting to learn about for sure.
That's interesting. That kind of revisionism is something that I think gets done often, especially when you're talking about like Quentin Tarantino movies. Like his main thing now seems to be telling historical tales that he completely retextualizes by having some element that never happened. Like the massacre of the Manson family instead of them doing a massacre themselves.
Yeah,
and something that I think has come up recently is the idea of the new show from Ryan Murphy, Hollywood.
Okay, I've heard of it. I've seen the Netflix thumbnail.
Well, yeah, we all have. Yeah, which is, from what I understand, like it doesn't feature, or maybe it does. I don't know. It's supposed to feature like fictional characters, but all their stories are sort of based on real Hollywood stuff.
Okay.
And so one of the characters is dating or. Well, they depict Rock Hudson in the show, and this is like a late 40s, early 50s, like young Rock Hudson, and they depict him as like being gay, like we eventually learn that he was in the real world, but it's not like a big deal. Like he's just like, I don't think he's like totally out, but he's like, yeah, it's cool to be gay, and I love being gay. And from what we understand about Rock Hudson, like that was never a thing. And it was Rock Hudson's life was tragic in a lot of ways because he had to hide being who he was, even to the point where getting sick and not being able to really fully confront it because he couldn't reveal the truth about himself. It's sad, but I think that that's a more important story than a fun fantasy story about like an alternate universe Rock Hudson who can just be as gay as he wants to.
Yeah, they've just like what do you know? It's like we've made like a comic book character version of someone where it's like we're reintroducing them. What are like the 4 bullet points we know about this person?
Yeah,
and there it is.
Yeah, and I don't think that like Ryan Murphy owes anything to Hollywood or to telling that story necessarily, but his version of this that he probably just executive produced and isn't even really involved in creatively will be the version that the majority of people in this era see. Like nobody. People might not ever watch a Rock Hudson movie or even like a documentary about his struggle with AIDS, but they'll know of him as this fun character in this Netflix show. And I just think that when you've got the biggest platform, you do have a responsibility to tell the truth about stuff. I mean, imagine if like They Shoot Horses, Don't They was like, oh, it's fun. It's a breakdance. Everybody wins at the end. It's a big breakdance competition. And look how cool it was. It's tough. Dancing this long is tough, but it makes me feel alive. Like if the movie was like about that than what it's actually about.
Well, I guess there's a ton of movies like that, and they're just like, I mean, I guess that's just propaganda.
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah. I would say harmful propaganda. But anyway, back to walkathons. It's a craze that began in the 1920s, and I've heard it said that like people, this is post World War I, an economic boom is starting. It turned out to be a bubble in America, and it's the Roaring '20s. People are looking for crazy things. Also, the Olympics had just started up, and so people were becoming fascinated with feats of endurance and strength, and also like setting records. So this is where you had like, oh, let's get 12 people on a bicycle, and flagpole sitters were a thing back then too.
Yeah,
and so
it had an element of like almost like reality TV to it too, something like that, with like these spectators and like embellishing their lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, and these competitions sort of sprung up around it. Marathon dances, dance competitions. They were often called walkathons back then because, remember at this time in our history, I mean, still now, but the church didn't like the idea of dancing. And so in order to make them as four-quadrant as possible, they renamed them to walkathons. They were also called, somewhat disparagingly, bunion derbies and corn and callus carnivals. Nailed it. And I've read that that every American city of 50,000 or more had at least one of these dance marathons at some point, although many towns banned them. In fact, Seattle passed an ordinance prohibiting any dance marathons within the city limits in the late 1920s because of the attempted suicide of a woman who had competed in a marathon that lasted 19 days, and she didn't win.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I mean, yeah, and this movie kind of has some element of that in this, too.
I feel like when the guy that wrote the book put this together, he definitely, like, just took all the major bullet points. So we need, the stories about people becoming distracted mentally, and sort of losing their minds. Let's get that in there. Let's show people shaving, while they dance. People sleeping and their partners holding them up. Let's hit all the bullet points into this story.
The fact that like, because this sounds nuts, all of this, and like
they went forever.
Yeah,
they went on forever. There was a guy named Callum DeVilliers from Minnesota, and like his claim to fame was that he was a champion who danced for like 3,700 hours, which comes out to 22 and a half weeks. He did this for 22 and a half weeks. That's like, the movie only goes to about 1,200 hours, and we don't even know who the winner is.
Yeah.
She would have had that baby on the dance floor. That's in the sequel.
Well, that would be totally something they would love, I bet.
Oh yeah,
too.
Yeah, she'd have to keep dancing the whole time.
Yeah, the fact that like it's wild because it feels like why is it this common knowledge? Like, why didn't I know about this? Because it's so nuts. But I guess it makes me think of how this has just always been a thing. Like how now every day something crazy happens that people like talk about on Twitter for that day, and then we forget it. Like that just, it's like that happens throughout history, maybe in a slower time scale, but like, the fact that there was stuff like this is insane.
I don't know what killed it. World War II definitely killed it.
Yeah, probably not because as much dancing.
Yeah, and I think there was a general sense of, well, this is frivolous. Also, I think all the tiny little tragedies that happened probably added up to just a general disgust with it in general. But they still exist, kind of.
Yeah.
I think they exist mostly for charity, and nobody gets it paid off of it. Like if you just Google dance marathon. Apparently a lot of colleges have picked this up. You'll see like huge stadiums filled with people with like glow sticks and stuff like that. And it seems like a big party. So I think that they're a lot different than they originally were.
Probably was like, it's probably just been sanitized over the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just, at that time, it was literally a bunch of hungry people who joined this thing to become like human animals in a circus. For the opportunity to eat, basically, every day. And I'm not sure that I never found any stories where the real life marathons used the sort of gag that they do in the film, which is the winner will be charged for all the food that they were served and will basically like liquidate the prize. But oftentimes in real life, the organizers, these events were like as crooked as wrestling, basically. Like the organizers would have like their own dancers, like their ringers that they were bringing. They were called horses, which tells you something, who would be like professional dancers who would like pretend to be, not with the organization. They pretend to be like amateurs. And then if somebody got too successful or somebody was hanging on too long, then they would try to like, make sure that their guy won.
I wouldn't be surprised if that whole like liquidating the winnings was true, because there's so many things that try to pull that now. Like you mentioned with wrestling, like like wrestlers are expected to like get their own rental cars and like hotels and like don't get health insurance. You know what I mean? So it's like even now, like there are these type of attractions where like these performers putting in all this like physical work are like not really being fairly compensated.
Yeah, so you're telling me that wrestling has been part of the gig economy before that was even a thing.
Yeah. Everything became like wrestling. So.
God.
And it has its roots in that kind of era. So
do you get the feeling that I think that if Vince McMahon's dad had left him a real estate empire instead of a carny like wrestling promotion empire,
he'd be president?
Yeah, they would totally be switched. If you switched Vince McMahon and Donald Trump, Vince McMahon would be president, and Vince McMahon would be a much more successful president. Like, he is just as venal and petty and corrupt as Donald Trump, but he's smart. Like he makes a bad decision sometimes, but I think he's a lot more cunning than Donald Trump is. Yeah, I can totally see that, actually. Yeah, we go over and listen to my podcast. We did an episode about the two of them, the Battle of the Billionaires. So oh yeah,
go check out Pro Wrestling Required Viewing.
Okay,
get the plug in there.
Listen to that one. But yeah, it's just sad to think of wrestlers as being like these contestants. If you watch the documentary Beyond the Mat, like one of the guys that they focus on is a pair of guys who like work in a funeral home or something, and they're part of like a small wrestling school, and they want to do this so bad, and then they don't even. Other parts of the documentary tell us like how little support like wrestlers receive, and there's the one guy that like breaks somebody's neck or something like that, and he's basically just let go by the organization because they can't do anything with him anymore. That's if you're familiar with that, think about that's where we're at with our dancers here.
Yeah, but a little bit worse, obviously.
A little bit worse. Yeah.
So yeah, it's totally believable that they would be like, sorry, we gotta pay. Now we have to pay ourselves out from this. Yeah.
And yeah, just to wrap up the kind of technical facts, a lot of the promotions would feed their competitors often. Like they would be fed sometimes 12 times a day. So that was a lot of people actually gained weight doing these competitions. But of course, it doesn't really change their economic circumstances at all. And then the people who come, everybody's pretty poor, right? But at least these people have tickets for, a dance competition and a hot dog or two. And I've heard that up to 75% of dance marathon audiences were women who, not to stereotype, but they would get into the sort of storylines that the management would, construct around the performers, like we see in the film. It was sort of, there's no soap operas back then, but this is a sort of compelling story about these people, even if the story is manufactured.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it's like the Road Rules of its time.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's a analog reality show, and then you would also get, like we see in the film too, people having side hustles, basically. Performing during the thing to get what they call like a silver shower. People would throw coins, and you get to keep that. And then if you have like an advertising sponsorship, like we see the characters get in the film, you could make a little personal money that way. But yeah, generally you're there to perform and eat and not really get paid.
Yeah. Okay, I could keep going into how much this reminds me of professional wrestling, but I won't.
I love that. No, I love that. That's the hidden connection that we've found here.
It's like, oh, you got a Slim Jim sponsorship. Good for you.
Snap your shins with a Slim Jim. But let's talk about our film.
Yeah.
Neither of us were familiar with it when we first saw it, and it is. I think this is the era for this, for sure, like 69, but it is like unremittingly dark. There's very little light in this film. There is humor, and it's a sort of like gallows humor. But even like a guy like Red Buttons doesn't get to tell too many jokes. Like everybody is just kind of there. And the movie kind of gives it away, in the beginning when they're all lined up and they talk about, wow, I feel like a cow, like in a cattle line. It's like, yep, that's where we're going. And from that very beginning where everybody has a little bit of personality and energy, they are just almost immediately eroded down into nothing, just having to do this night after night.
Yeah, it is very immediate, and it's also just dark in that like you said, there's no humor, but there's also like none of the like characters I found like particularly like likable. So like, it's just like, everyone's upset. So it's like not even like someone who I'm like, I mean, I don't want to root for anyone in this, but you know what I mean? It's just like watching a bunch of depressed angry,
assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's smart though. I've read the book, but I think that's really smart. You wouldn't want a complete innocent that would be too much to just watch them be crushed. In fact, I think like Bruce Dern and Bonnie Bedelia are probably the most innocent. Totally. And they're kind of assholes too. And as the movie ends, they're still in the competition. We don't know what's going to happen to them. I mean, she's going to lose that baby probably, but yeah, having these like already damaged people who don't deserve this, then just be destroyed by this. I think that, well, first of all, I feel bad for the band. Like you think it's hard to dance nonstop. These guys got to play for 12 hours and then they probably throw a phonograph on for the Dave portion, but the main character that Michael Sarrazin plays of Robert is strange. I don't know if they really had this in the late 60s, but like you couldn't put a character like this in a modern movie without him finding out that he tortured the horse before they shot it, or it's his fault that it died, or that he was happy to shoot Jane Fonda or whatever. He's distant, and we understand why he's distant because everybody is just shell-shocked by their experiences in the Depression, but he is so weird and so flat that would be a signpost in a modern film. Something's wrong with this guy. But I think in this film, it's hard to connect to him emotionally, but at the same time, I kind of like, yeah, I get it. It sucks.
Yeah, it is like the film is almost like kind of aggressive in that way too, where it's like I as a modern viewer, I'm almost like, oh, I want to like get more about him. Like, what's his deal? And they show these like later scenes. You come to find out
the flash forwards, right?
Yeah,
right.
Where I thought they were flashbacks, and I was like, oh, are we gonna dive into his backstory here? And it's like, no, it's just like matter of fact. Yeah.
Yeah. And he keeps wanting to just like go outside. He just wants to see the sun. And
he just wandered in there, right? Like,
yeah, basically. Yeah. I think I think they mentioned something about it in the movie, but in the book, they're both he and Gloria are, they're Hollywood, rejects. Like he wants to be a director. She's coming from an audition that she has kind of bombed. But yeah, he just wants to like get outside, and then he gets really close, and the guy running, or one of the guys, is like, "What are you doing? You get back in bed."
Yeah, I kind of liked that, and kind of like I was saying about everyone's sort of attitude is that it makes it feel like sort of real, or just in that it's like here are some regular people who have been like ground down by the Depression and whatnot. So it's it's a different interpretation than what you would get now. But I liked it, yeah.
And you've got like, speaking of characters that aren't angels, you've got Susanna York as this woman who is an actress and comes in and, is acting the way that you'd expect. I don't belong here necessarily, but maybe this will be good for me. and she's with her her partner who's kind of the same way, and then just watching them also just be totally ground down and destroyed by this is just horrible to see. It's, I don't know, I would compare it to, well, there's nothing to compare it to. Like, it's just, it wasn't this maybe in 1935, but in 1969, it's a metaphor, I think, for the American dream, or the lie that the American dream is to a lot of disenfranchised people. The idea that if you just dance hard enough and long enough, and if you just show grit, you know, that American determination, then you can be a success. And the truth is, only one person can be a success out of 144 couples, or two people, I suppose, if they split it.
And even then,
and the whole game is rigged from the start. So, yeah, I mean, it's impossible, especially in the times that we're in right now. It's impossible to not see that clearly as you know, what this movie is really about.
Yeah, it was interesting because that was pretty obvious, but I was sort of expecting the whole time, like, okay, there's gonna be more dimension to that, but there really wasn't. It was just like, look how awful this is.
Yeah.
But then something kind of weirdly finally clicked with me in the last shot where they're showing the disco ball, and it's really on the nose, but they're just going, you know, it goes on and
it's
on.
It's a party.
It
the party never
ends.
stops.
Yeah.
And you will dance. Dancing is required at the party. Yeah.
I was like, well, that's what the movie was saying the whole time, but for some reason that little cap on it, I was like, yeah, totally. I guess that's what I witnessed and what I am witnessing now, you know.
Would you say then that it is sort of not, it's not up, well, I don't know about the time, but it's not up to our modern standards of emotional sophistication? Because you're right. Like, everybody comes in kind of not broken, but pre-bent. And then over the course of the film, we know what's going to happen. They're all going to wash out or be disillusioned or just be destroyed. And that's what happens. And then there's a bunch of scenes where they're like forced to, you know, do 3-legged races or whatever it is. Like, do you feel like it should have had more of an emotional spectrum in, like, seeing, you know, maybe flashbacks from the characters, or more ups and downs, more chances at hope for the characters and the rugs pulled out, or what?
I don't know, because I feel like I've seen, you know, this kind of story told a bunch of different ways, and
yeah,
it, you know, sometimes just the really aggressive, upsetting ones don't always connect with me, but I kind of liked it with this one. I feel like I like the simplicity of that, like, making its point, and that we don't need to, like, dramatize the thing further, you know, just kind of show it. And I liked, like I said, the matter of factness of it. So I don't know. I don't know if you felt like that, where, like, maybe they could have given them some more arcs or something.
Well, again, I don't think that you could if you remade this, and nobody ever should, but if you remade this, you couldn't not have arcs. They would turn this into like a 8-episode Netflix series, and then every episode, except for the last one, would pick a individual character, and then we would get flashbacks, you know, to the early life, which would also be depressing, and we'd find out how they were, you know, pushed out of their home or their safe space to, like, end up here. And yeah, like a lot of Netflix, like a lot of Netflix material, it would have been superfluous and unnecessary. But that being said, like, the tonality, like the emotional tonality of the film is always at a very low ebb. Like, there are almost no successes. There's almost no high points. Like, in theater, they have a saying that says, mood spelled backwards is doom, which means basically just, you know, being edgy or having just one sort of, like, serious tonality is really going to shut you down. And I don't think that it sinks this movie, but it definitely limits what you experience as you watch the film.
Yeah, this was certainly a tone piece.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just because of how things are right now, but I was in the mood for it.
Yeah, so. I suppose it's the right time for it. Yeah. Yeah, the crazy things the derbies and the things that they make them do, which were all, you know, real things in the real world, but are nuts. Like, having them do the I guess they're not running, but to do like the circuit where they have to run around and around, and of course Red Buttons just croaks in one of them, and then Jane Fonda's got to drag his ass throughout the last of the thing, and they shoot the gun to end it, and the MC's like, yowza, 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 give a big hand to our competitors, and there's just like everybody's just wailing and moaning and just crying like on the ground. That's entertainment.
Yeah, and that sort of thing kept me going too, because that was some of the maybe educational aspect of it too. Like, oh, what else did they do? Okay, they had little roller derbies, or people sang little songs or whatever. So like, even that was like, oh, here's something different. Something kind of to keep you interested, or like show you something new about it.
Yeah, something that I thought was like Grapes of Wrath, the book, and the movie are both great. And they are just right in the middle, like we see, the Great Depression. This is a film that conveys the desperation of the Great Depression, but we don't ever see what you would think of as the hallmarks of the Great Depression. In fact, this is supposed to be one of the places to escape it. Like, this is where, if you're waiting in a bread line, or like you were afraid your job was going to get made redundant or something like that, and you came home from a long day of work, you go, hey, let's go get some popcorn and let's go, watch the dance marathon. It's a source of excitement for a lot of people. But of course, we're focusing on the people who had to suffer for it. And yeah, you just, without having to see anybody picking peaches or anything, like it's something that takes place in the margins of the Depression, but yet it really communicates the emotions of the Depression.
That makes me just think about how this sort of suffering and struggle is kind of present in all aspects of, your like life, even, in a time like this or whatever. And even in the things you do seek out to like kind of forget, like if you peel away a couple of layers, like you'll find, human misery in there. Like, if you, it's true though. Like people, like, people who, for example, right now are like, wrestling fans, you watch wrestling to escape, or video game fans, you play video games to kind of get away from that. There's got to be some element when you like, I just wonder what the perspective is from like some of the spectators at that event there. If they feel the same way as like someone who kind of doesn't want to look at things now for what they are, like when you find out of some of the shadier elements of this,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah. And we don't ever really, I think that again, in this, hypothetical Netflix series that I've created, like we would definitely get into the crowd too. Like we would be following some of the lives of some of the spectators, and at some point somebody would definitely stand up and throw their popcorn down and go, "This is too much. Come on."
Right.
But we don't see that. We just have pretty much like the one lady who just takes a fascination with our main couple. And that just contributes, I think, to the very, this movie doesn't talk anybody out of suicide. Do you know what I mean? Like this movie is very, it's depressing, and it's very nihilistic, I think, in its outlook. And maybe that's not their intention. Maybe their intention is more, this shouldn't happen to anybody, and sometimes death is an escape, which is also a sort of complicated message to communicate. But yeah, there are very few escapes from what's going on in the movie. What'd you think about the end of the film?
Well, I mean, I mentioned the last shot, which I liked a lot. But yeah, the where he helps her die is interesting. I guess that line, where he's like, "They shoot horses, don't they?" could be interpreted as like, is this like what the film's message is? Like, hey, it's okay to die if you want to die. I don't think it is, though. I think it's just like this happens to people.
It's certainly the conclusion that he came to.
Yeah.
As somebody who has suffered, similar to what she has, maybe less, but.
And of course, if this was a modern movie, they would definitely show you how weird he is, so we would know that he is wrong.
Yeah.
And
or he'd miss, she would have to live or something like that. Yeah. But the fact that the movie just says, look, you just watch these two people go through a living hell for, 6 weeks or whatever. Now they're not even going to get the thing. and she's got a gun in her bag. And he's like, okay, I'll help you do it. Okay. And we just do it. And that's it. And the cops show up and they shoot horses, don't they?
We would have seen her gun way earlier in the movie. The Netflix version.
Yeah. Did you know that Al Lewis has a small part in this? He's, of course, Grandpa Munster.
Yeah. I had to look that up because I was like, what's this guy?
I know that nose.
Yeah. He looks like a Dracula.
He's got that like flat hair, it's like the hair that's like combed out to the sides, but it's also sort of
boxy almost.
Got box head. Yeah.
Yeah, he was born to play a vampire looking guy.
Oh yeah. Wow. I don't know what else to say. I don't want this show to be like a dance competition, but did you ever have anything else that you wanted to say about the film?
No, I mean, there wasn't too much more to say because it was sort of like I said the whole time, kind of like feeling the same way about it. Like, okay,
it's stark and it's uncomplicated.
Yeah, I guess one. I don't even think a modern movie necessarily would have to do this, but a different take would sort of show maybe the complication in. That some people enjoyed it or something, like something like that. Like, I just imagine, I don't know. I keep putting, wrestling on it, but I think of an event like that where there is so much awfulness to it, but there's, why it continues on,
Yeah.
But I guess the dance competitions didn't continue on. So
no, we outgrew them or whatever reason we let them go. Well, you're doing all this plugging of wrestling. I'm going to talk about my movie show.
All right.
We've been doing... Well, actually, it's just a little side feature. We've been watching movies during the quarantine as a side feature for the Just Enough Joe podcast. And one of the movies that we watch... Well, I've gotten into the habit of like watching older movies, finding some things that I think could have been done better, and then like proclaiming, we got a remake X! Kind of jokingly, but also maybe seriously. And we watched Cabaret, which is, I think, emotionally similar in a lot of ways to this film. And I was like, remake Cabaret! Now, clearly, don't remake Cabaret. There's no point in that. But just the process of filmmaking and the fact that nobody gets to make the movie they exactly want to unless they're Neil Breen. Because there's producers, there's a studio that's going to come in and go, no, don't do that. And so therefore the message gets like diluted to a degree. And I think with this film, you have to say, like I said before, it's uncomplicated, but it's stark, and it wants to be stark, and it basically gets to tell the story that it wants to tell. Now, I'm not saying that studio interference could have made it better or more complicated or whatever, but I think it's rare that you get to see a film that clearly established exactly what it set out to do.
Yeah, it's not like fighting itself in any way.
No. And whether it makes it a compelling piece of art or not, I don't know. It's subjective. It's up to you. But it clearly got to do what it wanted to do, and in a world that we've compared to wrestling and to like all the horrible capitalistic elements of America, that's not something you get to do in Hollywood a lot. And I think that it's a success for that reason.
Yeah, it had me thinking about it, after I'd watched it, like kept thinking about it, and it was obviously educational in some ways. So
yeah,
I don't know if I'll watch it again. It's not like, hey, let's throw this one on for a good time. But
yeah. I felt the same way. I always feel bad when I see a movie that's really good, but I also say like, I don't know if I'd watch it again though. Like Requiem for a Dream is a movie that I always compare to that.
Saw
it's a
that
movie that
once.
Yep. I think that it's not a perfect film. I think it's more of a collection of like performances, great performances and scenes. But I don't know if I would ever watch it again. I don't need to see a lady get chased by her refrigerator.
Yeah. I watched that with 3 people, and afterwards...
not a lot of conversation?
No one said anything. Everyone just went to bed.
Yep, that's it. Well, we have some more to talk about, so we will, after we take a break for a word from our sponsors, and come back with more backtracking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the Sailor Warrior of Love and Justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the Trek side of the equation. Star Trek, the world of Star Trek, is a utopia, and it subsequently features relatively few dance marathons. In contrast to the era of the Great Depression, Trek presents a world in which any economic depression would be impossible. It's a world where the death of scarcity means every citizen is free to pursue their potential. But it's not a world without sickness and sometimes death, and though the Federation provides for its citizens, many worlds outside of the Federation, specifically ones trapped within totalitarian regimes or ones caught in war zones, experience death and hardship on an unbearable scale. It's into one of these worlds that Julian Bashir asserts himself. He's a brilliant Starfleet doctor who has known nothing but privilege and success, but he'll find his skills, his resolve, and his self-assuredness shaken when he's confronted with the Quickening.
A weapon of mass destruction.
Help me.
So small it can't be seen.
The Jem'Hadar destroyed our world.
So deadly it can't be stopped.
We're all born with it. We all die from it.
When an entire civilization is marked for death.
There is no cure. The Dominion made sure of that.
Time
2 Jem'Hadar ships headed this way.
is running out.
Shut everything down, now!
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Which is not a thing from Highlander. Well, it is a thing from Highlander. This is not the...
We almost
This is
went
not the
Highlander,
Quickening,
right?
Yeah, this is not the Quickening from the Highlander. No. This is something totally different.
Yeah, you know, they could. I think you could play dumb on that one.
It's something that it's ironically named too, because you've got this horrible disease, which is technically called the Telpin Blight or something like that, right? But the last phase of it is the Quickening, in which your gross face things go from blue to red, and then you're gonna die. But Quickening is coming to life, you know. But that's like what they call like you're gonna die.
Yeah, I guess it's just a very straightforward. Sometimes the best explanation is the easiest one. It's quicker.
It's like a euphemistic term, perhaps.
Yeah, fair enough.
If their lives are just unending misery, then death is something to look forward to.
Oh, this is probably the best. Honestly, the best connection we've ever made between two things.
You think so?
Yeah,
based solely on the fact that Michael Sarrazin is in both of them as a man who kills people.
Yes, not only that, but helps people who want to die.
Right. Yes.
I did not expect that when you pitched it to me, because I didn't know what the movie was.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, he's in both. I was like, okay, that doesn't sound. This is like a Batman one again. But then, right away he's like, yes, people beg me for death, and I'm like, okay.
We almost did a Batman. I've never gotten any official confirmation, but I think most people who care to think about it assume that not only is he, an accomplished actor and a recognizable guy, but yeah, he was cast for that reason.
Yeah, that's great. He was great. I am not as familiar with him until now, so.
Yeah, well, he did a lot of good films, but not a ton of films. And actually, it's funny. He was originally supposed to be the John Voight character in Midnight Cowboy.
Oh, okay.
Which, but just some kind of contract thing basically kept him out of it, and then Voight took the role. So if he had played that, you might really know who he is, and we might never have had John Voight.
Right. Yeah, sometimes.
Bittersweet.
What's great about this show sometimes is we get to, it's like, okay, this person's not just a random character actor to me in Star Trek. It's like, no, they were a movie star.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have a cultural significance in this case. This episode is also stark, and it's also uncomplicated. I think there's a good match in tone between this and the film, but it ultimately becomes, like a lot of Star Trek shows, a more optimistic sort of tale.
Yeah. It's also in that same way. It's uncomplicated in that it's a Star Trek episode, and you kind of know going into this one like what the outcome will be, with some variables there. But it made it, just kind of an enjoyable episode to watch. But I like the Trek optimism that was there.
Yeah, whereas the film, would seem to suggest, and art doesn't. Not all suggestions by pieces of art are like truths necessarily, but it seems to suggest that perhaps the best thing to do in a situation where there is no hope of success is to leave the situation, be it a contest or be it life. This episode challenges the very Star Trekian idea that you can always win. You can always succeed if you try hard enough, if you work hard enough, if your heart is pure enough. And even though that is challenged over and over again, it is rewarded, even in some small way at the end of the episode, as Bashir creates a cure for the next generation of these people. But we're going to lose this one still.
Yeah, I like the idea too. It's somewhat related to like current times, but just the idea of like there's a different way to go right now. It's not just die or suffer, like that that it's like, okay, we could do something else to improve people's lives, but no, you got to work against that, I guess.
Yeah, and we see that in the character of oh boy, I can't remember the character's name, but the young mother, in that Ikoria is her name, when she is suffering, even unto the worst suffering when Bashir fucks up, the first time, and everybody's like, oh God, this is so much worse than it was before. She still is just thinking about her child, and even as she is giving birth to the child and is about to die, like she's just so happy that her child made it into the world, and that the fact that her death is impending means nothing to her. It's just that hope for the future and hope for the safety and health of other people,
Yeah, I like that. Hope in the face of despair is a great theme for me.
It's almost the opposite of the movie of They Shoot Horses.
Yeah. It did not give me the same. I watched them back to back too, which was honestly, this was a great come down a little bit from the movie. Yeah. Not that I was like supercharged by the movie, but I was kind of like, oh, that was a bummer.
What I like about this episode is that we never get an answer. Star Trek, I don't know. Star Trek is good at, I guess, leaving open-ended questions, but it's usually really good at condemning the assumptions of the places that they go. So we talked about this on a previous show. They go to like Crazy Planet of the Week. Whatever they're doing definitely is bad, but then we intervene, hopefully in a positive way, and go, and you'll figure out the rest later. And then we never come back to that planet. We never find out what the answer was.
Yeah, right.
And in this, the episode never goes so far as to condemn Michael Sarrazin's character as like an angel of death. It doesn't, it definitely, obviously the first initial push it back is Bashir going, wait a minute, you're not even trying to help these people. You're just killing them. I'm a doctor. I'm going to take care of this. And it becomes more complicated than that. But when Michael Sarrazin keeps coming back, it's never like, you're the worst person ever. Why would you kill these people? In fact, when Bashir fucks up and hurts everybody, he claims a couple people. He relieves them of their pain.
Yeah.
And it's never like, how could you do that? It's very unjudgy for a Star Trek episode, and I think that is wise on the part of the writers of the show.
Yeah, so I'm expecting like there to be a reveal where he had like an ulterior motive or something,
Yeah, that would be a more clumsy, less sophisticated way to do it. Yeah, That's a question that I've always had about Star Trek, which is like, what do you think like the Federation would think about euthanasia or like the right to die?
I don't know. I guess, I mean, there's been plenty of episodes that sort of talk about other people doing it, and you see, like, I guess, what's the one where there's one where like Loxana Troy is like, get
that's
married
a
to
quality of life, I think it is.
Yeah. Kind of a similar concept there, right?
And there's the Worf one too, ethics.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I think maybe just going based off of its people's reaction to it, I mean, they're not super judgy, like you said, but they are, they do stick to like, preserving life as like a value. So
yeah, I think Riker agrees to help Worf kill himself, but then doesn't some other character come up to Riker and they're like, "What are you doing? Don't do that. Why would you do that?" He's like, "I don't know. It's just like what he wants me to do."
Well, and Riker, I feel like he's like super opposed to it initially too, isn't he?
Yeah, but they're buds and all. I think that I've wanted to do an Enterprising Individuals about this, and it's just never. It's hard to attack, I guess, as a question, but the best I've come up with is it isn't quite as big of a debate as it is now. I think that it's probably down to personal opinion in the Federation, and there may or may not be like a law or regulation against it, but luckily it probably wouldn't come up much if they have such good, medical technology. But you think about a show like The Good Place. Did you watch Good Place?
I did not, no.
Oh, well, I don't want to say anything about it.
Don't spoil it.
But you can definitely see episodes where they go to other places and you've got characters who are immortal or characters who are just kind of, I've had a good run. I'm kind of tired of this. Like, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like they probably don't worry about it as much, but then for other people, if you got the Prime Directive or whatever, right?
Right.
It's not going to stop other people.
Don't interfere, but then do, because we need an hour of TV.
Yeah. Julian, he's like, I feel like he's so breaking the Prime Directive, but I guess they've already been affected by the Jem'Hadar or whatever. So
yeah, well, I guess we don't get a sense of their. I thought they do say at one point that they used to be able to fly around and do stuff, right?
Yeah, that's true. When they show the mural or whatever, like it looked pretty sweet there.
Yeah. They've definitely suffered under this association with the Dominion. This episode apparently was the thing that we should be doing is watching the 1995 film Restoration, which it was apparently inspired by, according to Ira Stephen Bear, which is a movie I don't want to see. It's a mid-90s Robert Downey Jr. movie, costume drama. Don't care, but
right. Now I remember.
It's apparently about the royal physician to the king in England during the time of like the plague year and the Great Fire of London, and it just focuses on the idea of a doctor who kind of gets in over his head and has his faith in his own abilities kind of challenged.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was going to be a little bit of this. I mean, it was this, but I thought it was just going to be like Julian is doing a pretty good job, but this guy is kind of like sabotaging him, and we find out why. And I liked that it was like, no, Julian like really messed up pretty bad here for a minute.
Well, and it's also just, if you watch DS9 and you see the progression, because this is season 4 at this point, like the Dominion are about to really loom large in what's going on, but up to this point they've kind of been hiding in the background, and we just see the effects of if the Federation was evil, like what would the galaxy look like? And it would look like this. It would look like races and beings that are scared of the Dominion and don't want to just to trade because they're afraid that they'll piss their bosses off. And then you get a planet that did piss their bosses off, and they've been given this plague, which basically has completely destroyed their society over, the course of almost a century.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's who Bashir's really up against. He thinks, this is a Star Trek episode. I'm going to go in. It's going to be close, but we're going to take some blood samples and we'll fix the whole thing. And he does it in half the time and realizes, Oh no, they thought about this. Like the Dominion thought about this when they made the plague. Like let's make sure that even the tools that you would use to defeat it will make it worse.
Yeah, I like too that it's sort of like, I don't know, it's just a little bit more judgy on Bashir than anything, you know, like
yeah,
and kind of that Star Trek mentality of like, we come here, we know better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good Star Trek episode in that it kind of calls certain things into question a little bit.
Yeah, I think on the back of the box, I don't know about that. I think on the back of the box, it definitely would say that it's about like arrogance. But as far as the episode goes, I mean, he succeeds as much as he possibly could. And, you know, only a couple people who are already dying die a little faster. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if
but in way worse of a way, I think.
Oh no, they die screaming. Yeah, but I mean, but and the worst part is like the one guy. I don't know his character name, but I just call him the gross guy. He's like, "You guys think you're pretty great, huh?" And then later on he shows up.
I love that guy.
All right, help me out. And then he dies screaming. But it's, I don't know, like Bashir still kind of figures it out, and then it totally lets him off the hook because at the end of the episode, he's still, knows in the laptop, like, oh, I can figure this out. I'm gonna figure out this plague. Like, it doesn't. I'm sure that he unconsciously, we're led to believe that he has learned a lesson about like arrogance and his own skills, but he's still just, I don't know. I could believe if you told me in a couple episodes, oh yeah, he fixed that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I totally believe that he did.
I'll give you that in that, like, sometimes or a lot of times with Star Trek, it's like they just gotta like get to a satisfying conclusion,
Yeah.
So like they couldn't fully explore this in the way that the episode is intending to, but I feel like it gets there a little bit,
It's a problem that the franchise has dealt with for years, which is if these characters are all so perfect, how can we have them really mess up and really do bad things? If let's say Julian got half the population killed because he inoculated everybody and, they died from it. Like, how could we continue to like that character? Yeah. Week to week, we've got a whole nother 3 years to go with this show. And my thing is like, I don't know, man, other shows do it. Like, why can't your show do it?
Right.
And we've explored that a little in newer Star Trek shows, having characters are like, oh boy, that like Michael Burnham, like, oh boy, you really fucked up. And then having that character have to sort of claw their way back to redemption, and have a great arc. I don't see what the problem is, but yeah, this show I think definitely pushes as close to the edge as possible to have us go like, what is this? What are you doing? What's this character doing? But still sort of save the bacon, so to speak, at the end.
Yeah. I think it's more egregious in other Star Trek. Like it's been worse at other times than this, But I see where you come from.
Speaking of horrible characters, I love that this incredibly dark and emotionally affecting episode starts with Quark putting commercials on everybody's replicators.
Yeah,
It's like one of the wackiest openings of any DS9 episode, leading to like a mother literally dying with her child in her arms.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with any of the characters too. Like Worf's there. Yeah, that was fun.
He's just mad at the mug.
The mug gag was really good. Actually,
they must sell those mugs.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. That's going on the Christmas list there.
Yeah, I hope I can get one of those. What else here? The idea of I like the fact that it's this planet where they've been affected by this horrible plague, and it connects back to the series antagonist. But I could easily see Kirk's Enterprise or Picard's Enterprise pulling up to a planet in a one-shot situation where there's just, at 30 years old, we all succumb to something in the air or something like that. Oh, I guess we did this. It was Miri.
Yeah.
If the Miri kids had also developed a suicide cult based on turning 18, Children of the Corn style, I could see that being a viable way to do this story too.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I do like that it's like I don't know. There's so much good like world building in season like 3 and 4 of the show where it's like established. Just like here's like a snapshot of the Jem'Hadar, like what the Dominion's been up to. I mean, they do that for the rest of the show, but I like that it's not like this is not an arc thing. It's just like shows you the outlines of their civilization.
Yeah, and you have to wonder. I mean, we don't have time to get into it in the episode, but you have to wonder like how this has affected their civilization like as a whole. We see, and this episode's directed by the late great Renee Auberjonois, and there are some great sets in this episode. There's some great exteriors, just there. I don't know where they are. I don't know what the set is or what the location is, but it just looks like, wow, they live in a real crapsack world that really looks like it could have been something great previously. And they're just like, I'll give you some food for that hair clip. That's cool. And in like they shoot horses, you get the idea. It's hard to see. I don't know. Maybe it's my religious background, but I always compare it to God. It's hard to see God in they shoot horses. That seems like a world where there's no God, or God is dead.
Okay.
And even though Star Trek doesn't believe in God, there is, or call it whatever you want, just a positive force in the universe. I feel like the idea of the positive force in the universe is really challenged, but ultimately is still there. It was hidden by the most clouds possible, but in the end, the sun came out and God came out. And when you think about, speaking of existentialist writers, something like a book like La Peste or The Plague from Camus, that's a story about a plague that hits a town, and there's all these little people running around. They all have their lives. They all have their little foibles, and no real spoilers for La Peste, but nothing's going to help them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just what's going to happen to them is going to happen to them, and you can think about that as there being no God, and it just being nature having its way with you. Or you could think about it as there being a God, but he's like, nature's going to have its way with you. Like, I don't think that Trek ever really does stories like that, but this is as close as we can get to a story like that. Like, there's just nothing, even the solution, like there's just nothing Bashir can do. And even what he tries to do doesn't really work. And it's only, it's only the fact of childbirth. It's only the fact that the solution will come after he's left and gone. Like it's not even a solution, like it's the next generation, I guess, won't be affected by this, but that doesn't save any of the people that he has to talk to right now. Like it's about as depressing. It's about as nihilistic as Trek gets, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Do you think Star Trek requires like that outlook a little bit, like even when it's trying to be darker?
I think that just about everybody who's worked on the franchise either thinks that or has been told that's what it is.
Okay.
And I would say probably 75 to 80% of the fandom believes that's what it is. The main criticism you hear of any new Star Trek show is that it's not idealistic. It isn't the bright future that we were promised. It's, you know what I mean? Like that's just the rote criticism for every new thing you get. And I would argue that in a lot of ways, some of the new Trek is more idealistic than Trek's ever been.
Yeah.
People really criticized DS9 for being dark when it was on, and now 30 years later, it's widely known as the best series. And I think people confuse, they don't know what they're talking about when they say light and dark. They just mean they're being challenged in ways that they feel uncomfortable being challenged that way, and that's just what drama does. That's what story does.
Right.
Story.
Yeah, even my I'm not sure how I feel totally about like Discovery or whatever, but like it's not necessarily that it's trying to be dark or whatever you want to call it. That's not specifically that. So I kind of get what you mean, where it's like it's a lazy criticism almost.
Yeah. It just comes down to like Oh, in Discovery, spoiler for the pilot of Discovery, but like when Giorgio, Captain Giorgio was killed, and later on we hear that the Klingons ate her or whatever. And it's like, look, they're a warrior race. They're stranded on the ship with no food. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to eat the fallen. They're going to eat the defeated race or whatever. Right. And people are like, oh, it's just so horrible. It's like, yeah, I think all this stuff could have been in the margins of this world that you've always loved, but
I mean,
being confronted with it now.
Similar stuff has probably been said on, the Next Generation. It's just usually that kind of stuff is more played for laughs.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like a Klingon will be like, say something like that, and you're supposed to just be like, ha 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 ha,
I think Christopher Lloyd, like, stabbing Kirk's son to death is pretty depressing, but everybody seems to like that plot development of Star Trek 3.
Yeah, it's funny.
You're not giving this thing up. It's funny. Come on. When she says, David is dead, it's funny.
Well, if you got Christopher Lloyd doing it.
It is funny then, yeah.
You can't do anything not
Right,
funny.
Scott, stab. I like the turn that happens. I like the fact that Bashir, he screws up, or there's just something in his naivety that he didn't see, and a lot of people suffer, which is literally like what a doctor's not supposed to do, is make people suffer. And then he kind of gets called back, and he's on the runabout, and he's like, look, this is a personal project now. Like, just leave me here. I'm not on the clock. Like, I know that I'm not God. I'm a doctor, and I can't cure everything, but I have to make somebody's life better. And if that's what I can do for this woman, even if it's just to make her comfortable until she has her baby, then that's what I'm going to do. And I like the fact that even when he's humbled, he doesn't like kick a can and like storm off or something, or just blame it on like, well, nobody could do this. He's like, okay, then first and foremost, I'm a caregiver, and I'm going to do that if I can't do anything else.
Yeah, I love that. And I was a little surprised at first too when he was like, how could I be so arrogant? Because I was like, my thought was like, I don't know, I thought you were being a pretty solid dude sticking
you're
around
doing the
here.
work. Yeah, you're making it happen.
Yeah, I like that. This was a good I don't know, if you told me, not that I really have anything against Bashir, but if you're like, let's watch this Bashir episode,
this epic Bashir fail.
Yeah, that wouldn't be one I like rush out to watch,
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's pretty good. I can't think of any other really great Bashir episodes except maybe the Section 31 ones.
Our man
The
Bashir.
Wire. The Wire is one too. And, when you look at this in comparison to something like The Wire, The Wire's an episode where Bashir, he's going to doctor whether you like it or not. Garrick, we get the idea that like Garrick is in pain, but he wouldn't necessarily die. Like he just doesn't, he's going to go through this horrible thing. And Bashir's like, I'm going to be your doctor and I'm going to stay by you because I'm your friend too. And if the lesson that he learned was don't ever give up and, just be a doctor and you can help people, then he takes that lesson to this.
Yeah.
And then falls on his face and realizes, no, there's nothing I can do here. Yeah. It's interesting contrast.
I guess the best, you also just made me think the best Bashir episodes are when he's hanging out with someone else.
There's never like it's just Bashir by himself figuring something out.
You gotta get Garrick or O'Brien in there.
I'm not a big fan of the ones with the other genetic enhanced people either.
Oh,
when it's
wow.
Bashir doing Cuckoo's Nest or whatever. I don't really like those episodes.
No.
But yeah, this is an okay Bashir episode, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say before we start throwing some technology in here?
No. Just this was an okay, like you said, okay Bashir episode and pretty decent Star Trek. It was nice to watch one that's not like iconic or whatever, It was just like a kind of a nice chill episode, I guess, that's about a plague.
Yeah, it's not as powerful as I remember it being, like when I thought, we could watch The Quickening. I don't think it's quite as effective as it could be, but I think it's still a success. And I think it's just I think its best legacy for me is it's a really creepy implications. Like the fact that you could piss off the Dominion and they wouldn't bother to like blow up your planet Death Star style. They just like cough on you and it's like, enjoy that. Enjoy your entire planet and race,
Right.
like just falling apart over 300 years.
Yeah, especially after dealing
sells their cruelty.
Like, you thought the Cardassians were bad, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Look out for the silly putty guys. Well, something that makes Trek is the technology of the future. It sometimes facilitates what the characters are doing, but often, as Bashir discovers in this episode, it complicates what they're dealing with. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, and we add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode, and we see how each would be different. We call it a technological exchange. And our list of technologies consists of phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. 10 items, and I'll roll on our randomly selecting 10 number device. And we got tricorders. Someday, I don't think we've ever gotten advanced medical tech.
Wow.
This would have been the one to get it, but tricorders will do. What would happen if we added tricorders to... They shoot horses, don't they?
Do you have any mysterious illnesses? I mean, we had some deaths, right?
Yeah, we specifically see a couple times like that they have doctors on staff. And then somebody will collapse or something, and the doctor will run over, and they'll be like, "Oh, she's fine, she's fine." And I wonder, clearly those doctors are corrupt in this instance, right? Like, is she fine? Would it would it forward the storyline of the hobbled dancer if they kept her in when she should? All of these people should clearly not be doing this, you know. But like, how much do they lie about it? And would a tricorder facilitate that, or would it keep them? It would be tougher for them to lie if you could literally see what's being done to these people day by day.
I'm sure they could they could work around it, you know, manufacture however they want.
Oh, it could add a new element to it, so you could literally put everybody's biostats up on a board, you know, and then say, "Oh, looks like Jane Fonda's, you know, she's 64% dehydrated, and Bonnie Bedelia's baby, will she be able to win the contest? That baby's coming in 5 weeks, you know, 3 hours and 27 seconds or something."
So it goes from reality TV to real life The Sims.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Just measure everyone's vital mood bars.
I mean, that's pretty much what reality TV is turning into, isn't it?
Yeah, especially more and more, yeah.
Everybody's strapped with Fitbits, and yeah. What's the new show is like, we got a bunch of hot people on an island, but they can't fuck.
Is that Survivor? Like, I don't know.
No, it's like, it's specifically about, you know, we picked the hottest contestants, but
they're not allowed to bang.
Unlike The Bachelor, where I always thought The Bachelor was creepy, because it's like, this guy is going to penetrate like half a dozen of these girls, right, at some point. But this is like, no, the thing is, they can't do it. Nope. And then somehow you win by like not doing it, I guess. I don't know.
No Fap Island, I think it's called.
Coming out this November.
Yeah, wow, I think that sounds awful.
You could definitely use the tricorder. It would just be like everything in this universe, used to exploit these poor people.
Could it be used to search for a dress? A missing dress? Just another storyline that now would have had like a 3-episode arc, you know?
They would have found that thing right away. Yeah. So the dress.
That was very random, I thought.
I feel limited by not understanding all the functions of a tricorder. Sometimes a tricorder seems like it can do anything, and then other times they're like, there's too many mineral deposits. We can't find
Yeah, it'll be like, he's on the other side of the planet, and
yeah. And like the fact that there is specifically a medical tricorder, like you can find somebody, like you said, on the other side of a planet with a regular tricorder. What can the medical tricorder do that a regular tricorder couldn't do?
Right, it can scan every blood cell or something. I don't know. Yeah.
It's got the database of diseases programmed into it or something like that.
Are there other types of tricorder?
I think there are like engineering tricorders, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So they're versatile, but not that versatile. You need different versions of him.
Yeah, I love the idea of the stats though. That's probably the greatest thing to be gained from this.
The tail of the tape. Yeah, you've got Red Buttons over here, and he's 57, though he claims to be 35. And yeah, he's been shot 3 times. Maybe that'll be a problem for him. We'll see.
You know what? It would be easier to monitor the race because they were like talking about the last 3 people, and I was like, how do you know who's winning in this roller derby?
Yeah, when you know that it's all rigged, then it doesn't really matter, I guess. But I got the sense that, I felt like they didn't really bring up enough that it was clearly rigged. I mean, you got the impression that it was, but Jane Fonda goes through all this trouble of like sleeping with this guy who she does not want to sleep with at all. And I guess I didn't get until after I saw the film that, you know, he could help her out. You know, the whole thing seemed brutal, but kind of fair in a weird way up to that point.
Yeah, it felt like they would like exploit things about you, but like otherwise.
Yeah, but if you came in fourth or fourth to last, then you were fine. But yeah, if it is rigged, then she's thinking that he could help her out a little bit. But of course, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, like I said, Margot Robbie needed to explain that to you.
So what about the Trek episode? And this is where we fall down, because what's the real difference between advanced medical technology and tricorders in this case?
Oh, yeah.
I think we decided that tricorders just meant the ability to sense in general, like the powerful sensors that they have, and not cloning somebody. That would be advanced medical technology.
Okay. Yeah, well, even then, though, like, that played a big role in this. So,
well, yeah, I think that we would possibly find ourselves in a situation where Bashir, as a doctor, would be using more traditional medical equipment or diagnosing equipment, and we might find ourselves in a place where we don't have the big turn in the middle of the episode where everyone is affected by the EM fields of the scanning equipment and the diagnosing equipment.
Yeah, so, like, he probably wouldn't have hurt them. He probably would have figured it out, right?
Well, I don't know. If you eliminate that beat, do you end an episode with, I am God? Like, Bashir never gets the humbling that he gets over the course of the episode.
Yeah, because I could have, like I said, I totally could have seen an episode that ends, like, thematically, like, halfway in, where the one guy finally comes over and he's like, I want you to help me, I thought at the time, like, oh, they resolved this guy's beef really quickly, and then it's because he's dying in the next scene.
Yeah, right, yeah.
yeah, I guess that could have happened. But then also, like, why couldn't they have figured it out? I don't know. That's, like, what prevented them? I guess that they just kind of, they were so beaten down and gave up.
Yeah, I get the impression that this had been going on for a long time, and so maybe that's why you get a guy like Michael Sarrazin who's, feeding everybody hemlock, because that's the only escape that they see. But yeah, that's my theory, that like Bashir, if he had approached it more traditionally, he definitely would have mixed up some kind of antigen cocktail, and eventually once Ikoria's child was born, would have realized that it would be a situation where the immunity is transferred. But maybe he would have walked out of there being like, well, some people died, but your boy did it one more time. He would have left a little more arrogant than he went in.
Yeah, that could have totally altered the course of history here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because Bashir's arc is kind of weird in DS9 because, he's kidnapped and replaced with another Bashir at one point. So it's a little hard to track. I'm trying to think of what the next challenge to his superiority would have been and how differently he would have approached it. But maybe he would have.
Oh, yeah. Wait, at what point was he kidnapped again?
He was kidnapped in I think the 5th season, and replaced with a changeling. He was the secret changeling on the station.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but it's not. I don't think the writers even really knew they were doing a thing, so it's not tracked all that well.
Yeah, because that's something that doesn't even, that and the one you mentioned earlier where the Cuckoo's Nest episode. I remember it now, but it's one of those ones where it's like, oh yeah.
Not big standouts. No.
No.
All right. Well, we clutched it together, I think.
No, that was a good. I feel like with They Shoot Horses, like any of them could have been good. So.
Oh yeah.
It's just.
What if they had shields?
That would be sweet, actually.
He shot her, but the bullet just ricocheted off. Should we tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtracking?
Yes. So for the next episode, we're taking it back down a little bit more lighthearted, because that's what you got to do sometimes. We're talking about the Voyager episode, Vis-a-Vis.
Yes.
And it's parallels with the movie Face Off,
yes.
which is a classic in its own right. So
yeah,
I wonder how many Academy Award nominations that one got.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, one of the Sydneys was up for it, but John Woo beat him out. I think it's, Nick Cage has always been in the public consciousness, and he is ever fascinating and fun to talk about. We're actually speaking again about my project on Just Enough Trope, co-videos. We're doing a Nick Cage double feature for that.
Oh, exciting.
Vampires Kiss and Moonstruck. So
cool.
About as far away as you can get from each other. And people are talking now, of course, about the fact that he is going to appear as a Joe Exotic-like figure, I think, in a TV series about a exotic animal keeper. But the fact is, he's already played that role, baby. In the 2019 direct-to-video film Primal, he plays a exotic animal keeper and trainer whose one of his creatures gets loose on a ship, and it's like Die Hard on a ship, which is Under Siege, I guess. Under Siege with a leopard.
Wow, I love the movie math being done here.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
so
that's cool.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage, and of course we can't forget John Travolta as well.
Legends.
The fatter Nicolas Cage, yeah. So can't wait to talk about that next week. And that's it for this week's Backtrekking. Thanks for listening. And if you like the show, tell a friend. Follow us on @Backtrekking on Twitter, and let us know what you think we should cover on future episodes of the show. Gooey, where can people find you online?
You can find me online on Twitter @GooeyFame, and I got some other shows on there: Pro Wrestling Required Viewing, Virtual Theater, and Backtrekking, I guess. Sorry,
yeah.
I was like, what's the third one? It's Backtrekking.
Doing here? Yeah.
Yeah, check them out.
Check that out. I'm at @KA1IBAN on Twitter, and I guess I would send you to @JustEnoughTrope for pop culture news and discussion. And if you want to check out our co-videos series that we're doing right now, we actually do those live. We broadcast them live. We usually put a thing on Twitter before we go live. So if you want to hear us talk about films, check that out as well on Twitter. And that's it for us. We will see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.